In the cold vastness of space, a massive alien fleet emerged from the inky void without warning. Hundreds of sleek, silver ships arranged themselves in an ominous formation as they glided silently towards the blue-green marble that was Earth. On the surface, billions of humans went about their daily lives, blissfully unaware of the impending threat that lurked just beyond the exosphere. At the International Space Defense Command, ISDC, a klaxon suddenly wailed, jolting Lieutenant Samantha Thompson out of her usual late-night boredom. Heart pounding, she frantically scanned the readings on her console, hardly believing the data scrolling before her eyes. Multiple bogies entering the solar system. Thompson yelled. They're moving fast and not responding to hails. It's a full-scale invasion force. Within seconds, the ISDC erupted into a frenzy of activity. General Mikhail Petrov stormed into the command center, his face grim. Get NATO, the UN, and every major world leader on the line now, he barked at a wide-eyed communications officer. And someone wake up the president and prime ministers. If this is humanity's last stand, we face it together. As alarms blared across the planet, activating long-dormant defense protocols, the alien fleet took up position in high Earth orbit. A palpable tension gripped the world. Who were these mysterious visitors, and what did they want with Earth? The answer came in the form of a chilling ultimatum, delivered in flawless English across every frequency. People of Earth, a cold, imperious voice intoned. You stand on the precipice of annihilation, your world has been judged as inferior, your species deemed unworthy of continued existence. Lay down your archaic arms and surrender unconditionally. Resist, and face the unyielding might of the Zorak Empire. In the White House Situation Room, President Amanda Rollins listened to the alien demands with a mixture of fear and grim resolve. Military advisors and world leaders flickered on view screens around her, their faces reflecting the same dread and determination. They all knew Earth's defenses were laughable compared to the aliens' technology. But to give up without a fight? To consign humanity to eternal servitude or extinction? Unthinkable. We don't stand a chance against them conventionally, General Petrov stated bluntly, his Russian accent thick. But this is our home. Our people. We must find a way to resist. A tense silence fell, broken only by the hum of electronics and the muted sounds of staffers scrambling outside. Finally, President Rollins spoke, her voice steady, despite the weight pressing down on her. We have to play for time. We need intel on their capabilities, their objectives. Anything to give us an edge. She turned to address the global leaders on the screens. I ask all of you to stand with the United States, with all of Earth, in this darkest hour. Activate your militaries. Prepare your people for the battle to come. If we cannot save our world, we'll sure as hell avenge it. Solemn nods answered her. One by one, the view screens winked out as the leaders rushed to mobilize their forces. President Rollins bowed her head for a long moment, alone with the crushing burden of the future of humanity. Then, straightening her shoulders, she strode out to address the nation and a waiting world. In the desperate hours that followed, Earth's combined military might assumed a defensive posture. Artillery batteries swiveled skyward. Jet fighters and bombers scrambled to the skies. Missile silos and laser platforms hummed to life. In the streets of every city, civilians scrambled for shelter even as many brave men and women reported for duty, ready to lay down their lives in humanity's ultimate stand. Yet even as Earth braced for war, a niggling question gnawed at the minds of the planet's best and brightest. The Zorak Empire clearly commanded technology centuries, if not millennia, beyond humanity's. Why issue an ultimatum at all? Why not just vaporize Earth's primitive defenses from orbit and be done with it? What was their game? High above, in the obsidian depths of the massive Zorak flagship, Supreme Commander Zorgax pondered that very question. The Earthlings' resistance is futile, he growled, towering over the cowering bridge crew. Why waste time with this charade of diplomacy? Let us simply burn their cities, and sow their fields with salt. But Warlord Krang, Zorgax's greatest rival, saw an opportunity to advance his own ambitions. The Emperor grows bored with our efficient conquests, he purred, tongue flicking between needle teeth. He demands a spectacle to slake his jaded appetites. Let us give these humans a glimmer of false hope, then crush it slowly before his eyes and our entire empire. A grinding war to underscore the futility of defiance and the glory of the Zorak. A cunning light glinted in Zorgax's reptilian eyes. To orchestrate a great and terrible war, all for the fleeting amusement of the bloated aristocracy, the idea appealed to his cruel nature. Very well, he snarled. Let the primitive apes struggle and scrabble. We shall put on a show that will echo through the ages. And so this grand and awful stage was set. On one side, a fractious but defiant humanity, wielding the tools of a bygone age against the mightiest power the galaxy had ever known. On the other, an almost godlike alien empire, hungry to snuff out and subjugate yet another world on its relentless march. Yet in their immeasurable arrogance, the Zoraks had forgotten a cardinal lesson of warfare: never underestimate a species that has clawed its way to the stars, that has endured every hardship the cosmos could throw against it. In the crucible of the coming conflict, it would be humanity's grit, ingenuity, and indomitable will that would light the spark of the galaxy's most improbable resistance. The battle for Earth and the very future of humankind had begun. As the first Zorak dropships punched through Earth's atmosphere, leaving blazing contrails in their wake, humanity steeled itself for the onslaught. Yet even in their darkest hour, the planet's defenders refused to succumb to despair. In bases and bunkers across the world, a desperate plan began to take shape, one that would pit human grit and ingenuity against the cold, implacable might of the invaders. Their technology is beyond anything we've ever seen, Dr. Ella Adeyemi, Earth's foremost expert on xenotechnology, explained to a grim-faced war council. Their ships are powered by zero-point energy, their weapons fire concentrated plasma that can level cities. And those force fields of theirs? Virtually impenetrable to our conventional arms. A pall of gloom settled over the assembled generals and world leaders. What hope did bullets and bombs have against such godlike power? But Dr. Adeyemi wasn't finished. However, she continued, a glint of determination in her eyes, I believe the Zoraks have a critical vulnerability, one born of their own arrogance and complacency. She brought up a holographic display of a captured Zorak rifle. The weapon was a sleek, alien thing, more akin to a sculptor's fever dream than a tool of war. But what drew the council's attention was the complex web of circuitry and energy conduits that comprised its inner workings. Look at this design, Dr. Adeyemi said, zooming in on the rifle's core. See how everything is focused on harnessing and projecting pure energy? I've studied the Zorak's technology, and it's all based on the same principles. Plasma, lasers, force fields, they've completely abandoned kinetic energy weapons. And why wouldn't they? General Petrov scoffed. Their weapons are centuries ahead of ours. How could primitive slug throwers possibly compare? Dr. Adeyemi smiled grimly. That's just it, General. They're so confident in their energy weapons, they've never developed defenses against physical projectiles. Their shields are calibrated to deflect and disperse high-energy particles, not solid matter moving at hypersonic speeds. Realization dawned on the council like a sunrise after an endless night. You're saying our bullets, missiles, even railguns, they could pass right through the Zorak's defenses? President Rollins asked, hardly daring to hope. Theoretically, yes, Dr. Adeyemi nodded. But we'll need to strike hard and fast, before they realize their vulnerability. If we can disrupt their shield harmonics with a massive kinetic barrage, we might just give our forces a fighting chance. A ripple of grim determination spread through the War Council. It was a desperate plan, a seemingly impossible task, to coordinate a worldwide counterattack in the face of annihilation. But if it worked, if they could catch the invaders off guard, then that's what we'll do, President Rollins declared, steel in her voice. We'll throw everything we have at these bastards, every bullet and bomb and rocket. Dig museum pieces and old weapons stores if we must. This is humanity's finest hour. And if we fall and Earth with us, let the galaxy remember we went down fighting. And so, even as Zorak war machines rained fire and fury upon the world's cities, even as their monstrous infantry fell upon human defenders like demons from the pit, the global resistance launched its audacious counterstrike. From the venerable M1 Abrams and T-90 tanks to the mighty A-10 Warthog and Su-25 Frogfoot, the relics of 20th and 21st century warfare roared to life once more. Streams of armor-piercing rounds, high-explosive anti-tank missiles, and depleted uranium slugs streaked towards the alien invaders on every battlefront. Meanwhile, swarms of cruise missiles, rocket artillery, and railguns saturated the skies with hypersonic shrapnel, forcing the Zorak's energy shields to overload and flicker. To the invaders' shock and dismay, the primitive human projectiles punched through their failing force fields like they weren't even there. Sleek alien hulls crumpled under the relentless hammer blows of obsolete human ordnance. Shimmering energy barriers collapsed as the brute power of chemical explosives and kinetic impact overwrote the elegance of monopole fields and gravitic webs. In orbit, the Zorak fleet reeled as fusillades of nuclear-tipped rockets, mass drivers, and old-fashioned fragmentation warheads shattered their once invulnerable ships like brittle glass. Supreme Commander Zorgax watched in disbelief as his grand armada crumbled before the furious onslaught of the primitives. How could this be? How could the mighty Zorak, who had conquered 1,000 worlds, be laid low by such antiquated weapons? Yet even as the invaders staggered under the ferocity of Earth's counterattack, they were quick to adapt. Warlord Krang rallied the fleet, ordering power diverted from weapons to shields, recalibrating the energy barriers to resist physical impacts. On the ground, the Zorak infantry switched tactics, keeping their distance and bombarding human forces with plasma artillery and swarms of microdrones. What had begun as humanity's last, desperate gambit quickly devolved into a brutal stalemate, a grinding war of attrition that set the world ablaze. Cities crumbled to ash under alien plasma fire, while Zorak war machines and infantry fell by the thousands to human guns and grit. In the ruins of Hong Kong, Shanghai, New York, and 100 other metropolises, the battle raged street by blood-soaked street. The thunder of tank tracks and the whine of alien engines filled the air, punctuated by the chatter of machine guns and the sizzling crackle of plasma rifles. Neither side could gain the upper hand, but neither would they yield. And so the war ground on, days turning to weeks, the smoke of battle shrouding the world in a pall of destruction. Millions perished, and millions more took up arms in their place, driven by hate and fear and a primal urge to see humanity endure. But as the casualties mounted and supplies dwindled, as the weary defenders looked to the stars and beheld the inexhaustible might of the Zorak war machine, a grim question began to fester in the hearts of even the most stalwart: how long could one battered world, armed only with the weapons of yesteryear, hold out against the power of an empire that spanned the stars? The answer, perhaps, lay locked in enigmatic secrets buried deep in the alien wreckage that littered the planet's scarred surface. Secrets that, if unraveled, could turn the tide of the war or seal Earth's doom forevermore. Even as the battle for Earth raged across the planet's surface and the cold void of space, a different sort of war was being waged in the hushed halls of power and the secret laboratories of the Resistance. For while the brave soldiers and pilots of Earth fought tooth and nail to hold back the Zorak onslaught, the world's greatest scientists and engineers frantically raced to unravel the secrets of the alien invaders' technology. At the heart of this covert effort was Dr. Ella Adeyemi, the brilliant xenotechnology expert who had first identified the Zorak's vulnerability to kinetic weapons. In a heavily guarded research facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, she and her team pored over the wreckage of downed alien craft and captured equipment, searching for any clue that could turn the tide of the war. "Look at this," Dr. Adeyemi murmured, her brow furrowed in concentration as she examined a shattered piece of Zorak armor under an electron microscope. "The molecular structure is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's almost as if the material was grown rather than fabricated." Her assistant, a young prodigy named Kai, leaned in for a closer look. "Could it be some kind of biomechanical composite?" he asked, his eyes wide with fascination. "A fusion of organic and inorganic components?" Dr. Adeyemi nodded slowly, her mind racing with possibilities. It would explain the armor's incredible strength and flexibility. But how do they create such a material? What kind of technology could blend living tissue with metallic alloys on a molecular level? As they delved deeper into the alien wreckage, a disturbing picture began to emerge. The Zorak ships, their weapons, even their soldiers' very bodies all were infused with a dizzying array of hyper-advanced nanotechnology, biotechnology, and exotic metamaterials. It was a level of engineering sophistication that dwarfed anything humanity had ever achieved, or even dreamed of. Yet for all the invaders' godlike technology, one glaring omission stood out like a beacon amidst the ruins. Nowhere, in all the shattered hulks of alien tanks and downed fighters, in all the twisted remnants of Zorak weaponry and equipment, could Dr. Adeyemi's team find any trace of traditional kinetic energy weapons. No railguns or coilguns, no high-velocity projectiles or shaped charges. It was as if the very concept of using physical force to destroy a target had been erased from the Zorak's military doctrine. Every weapon, every defensive system they employed relied entirely on exotic energy fields and directed energy beams. It doesn't make sense, Kai muttered as he sifted through the debris. Why would a species with such advanced technology completely abandon kinetic weapons? Even if energy weapons are superior in most ways, you'd think they'd keep some physical projectiles as a backup, or for specialized roles. Dr. Adeyemi chewed her lip thoughtfully, her mind churning with theories. Maybe they did, once, she mused. But over time, as their energy weapons grew more and more powerful, they came to see kinetic weapons as obsolete, even primitive. A relic of their own distant past, not worth the time and resources to maintain. She picked up a twisted piece of alien alloy, turning it over in her hands. Think about it. When was the last time humanity used swords and spears in real combat? We still train with them for sport and ceremony, but as practical weapons of war? They've been superseded by guns and bombs. To the Zoraks, kinetic weapons must seem just as quaint and archaic. Kai nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. And because they see kinetic weapons as beneath them, they've never bothered to develop defenses against them. Their shields and armor are optimized for energy attacks, not physical impacts. Exactly, Dr. Adeyemi said grimly. But that arrogance has left them vulnerable. If we can find a way to exploit that weakness, to hit them hard and fast with a massive kinetic bombardment. She trailed off, her gaze distant, as if seeing the shape of a plan forming in the mists of possibility. Kai, too, felt a flicker of hope kindle in his chest. For so long, the war had seemed hopeless, humanity's primitive weapons hopelessly outclassed by the invaders' tech. But now, at last, they had a glimmer of a chance. Yet even as Dr. Adeyemi and her team raced to turn their newfound knowledge into a workable strategy, they knew time was running out. With every passing day, the Zoraks tightened their grip on the planet, their conquering armies sweeping across continents like a plague. If humanity was to have any chance of survival, they needed to act fast, to strike back before it was too late. In secret meetings with the world's military leaders and the tattered remnants of Earth's governments, Dr. Adeyemi laid out her audacious plan. They would gather every kinetic weapon they could muster, from ancient tank cannons and rocket artillery to cutting-edge railguns and scramjet missiles. Then, in a coordinated global assault, they would unleash hell on the Zorak invaders, saturating their forces with a storm of steel and fire. It was a desperate gamble, a last-ditch effort to turn the tide of a war that had already claimed billions of lives. But it was also humanity's best and perhaps only hope. Against all odds, against an enemy that outgunned and outclassed them in every way, the people of Earth would have to dig deep, to marshal every ounce of ingenuity and courage they possessed. In hidden factories and makeshift workshops across the planet, a secret army of engineers and weapons experts labored day and night, retrofitting old weapons with new technologies, jury-rigging advanced targeting systems and guidance packages to turn dumb bombs into precision munitions. Tank crews drilled endlessly in the art of ambush and hit-and-run tactics, learning to use their lumbering machines like scalpels against the enemy's weak points. All the while, Dr. Adeyemi and her team continued to study the alien wreckage, gleaning every scrap of knowledge they could about the invaders' technology and vulnerabilities. They pored over captured databases and interrogated Zorak prisoners, piecing together a fragmentary but invaluable picture of their enemy. And as the days turned to weeks and the weeks to months, as the shattered remnants of humanity prepared for their final stand, a grim resolve began to take hold. They had suffered unimaginable losses, seen their cities reduced to rubble and their loved ones slaughtered by the millions. But they would not go quietly into the night. They were human, the sons and daughters of a world that had endured every hardship and catastrophe the universe could throw at them. And now, armed with nothing but grit and ingenuity and a stubborn refusal to submit, they would face the most powerful empire in the galaxy, and they would make them bleed. The stage was set, the players assembled. In secret bases and bunkers across the planet, humanity's last and greatest weapons were primed and ready, waiting only for the signal to unleash their fury. And on the shattered battlefields of 1,000 ruined cities, the soldiers of Earth prepared to sell their lives dearly, to fight with every ounce of strength and courage they possessed. For this was the hour of humanity's last stand, the final battle in a war that would decide the fate of an entire species. And though the odds were stacked against them, though they faced an enemy that seemed invincible, they would not falter, would not yield. They were human, and they would fight to the bitter end for their world, for their children, and for the future of all that they held dear. As the sun rose over the blasted ruins of what had once been Shanghai, the air thick with the acrid stench of smoke and death, Corporal Liang Chen of the People's Liberation Army gripped his rifle with white-knuckled determination. Around him, in the shattered remnants of skyscrapers and apartment blocks, his fellow soldiers hunkered down, their faces grim and haggard from weeks of relentless fighting. In the distance, the thunder of alien artillery echoed like the footfalls of an angry god, each blast sending tremors through the rubble-strewn streets. Liang knew that sound all too well, the bone-rattling thud of Zorak plasma cannons, each shot capable of vaporizing a city block. But he also knew that the invaders were not invincible, that for all their advanced technology, they could still bleed. "Get ready," his sergeant barked, his voice hoarse from shouting over the din of battle. "Intel says the Zorks are massing for another push. Armor and infantry, with drone support. They'll be coming down Nanjing Road, trying to flank our positions." Liang nodded grimly, his finger hovering over the trigger of his battered Type 95 assault rifle. It was an old weapon, a relic of a bygone era, but it had served him well in the close confines of urban combat. And with the new depleted uranium rounds the eggheads back at HQ had cooked up, it could punch through Zorak armor like a hot knife through butter. All along the line, his comrades readied their own weapons, rocket launchers and heavy machine guns, sniper rifles and grenade launchers. They were a motley crew, regular army and militia, veterans and raw recruits. But they were united in their determination to hold the line, to make the invaders pay for every inch of Chinese soil. Suddenly, the ground shook with the thunder of alien engines, and around the corner came the first of the Zorak tanks, its sleek, insectoid form glinting in the morning light. Behind it marched rank upon rank of alien soldiers, their chitinous armor glinting with a sickly sheen. "Fire!" the sergeant yelled, and the street erupted in a maelstrom of gunfire and explosions. Rockets streaked from shattered windows, slamming into the lead tank with a force that shook the earth. High explosive rounds from heavy machine guns stitched across the alien infantry, sending chitin and ichor flying. But the Zoraks kept coming, their armor shrugging off the hail of human gunfire like rain off a tin roof. Their return fire was devastating, searing beams of plasma that vaporized concrete and flesh alike. Soldiers screamed as they were incinerated, their ashes scattering in the breeze. Liang gritted his teeth and kept firing, his rifle bucking against his shoulder with each shot. He saw one of his rounds catch an alien soldier in the faceplate, shattering the armored glass and sending the creature tumbling to the ground. Another round took a Zorak officer in the knee joint, severing the limb in a spray of blood and sparks. But it wasn't enough. The aliens kept coming, their tanks shrugging off rockets and shells like pebbles, their infantry surging forward with relentless determination. Liang saw his comrades falling all around him, cut down by plasma fire or torn apart by the razor-sharp claws of the alien soldiers. And then, just when all seemed lost, a miracle happened. From the ruins behind the Chinese positions, a squadron of Type 99 tanks roared into view, their cannons already swiveling to track the alien armor. These were no ordinary tanks, but machines that had been hastily retrofitted with the latest in human weapons technology: railguns and coilguns, hypervelocity missiles, and EMP projectors. The lead Type 99 fired, and the world seemed to hold its breath. The tank's railgun round, a solid slug of tungsten the size of a telephone pole, crossed the distance to the alien tank in less than a heartbeat, slamming into the machine's shields with a force that sent shockwaves rippling through the air. For a moment, the alien shields held, flickering with an eldritch light as they struggled to repel the titanic kinetic energy of the human projectile. But then, with a sickening crunch, the round punched through, shattering the tank's armor like an eggshell and detonating deep within its guts. The alien machine exploded with a force that shook the earth, sending shrapnel and burning plasma flying in all directions. The Zorak infantry, caught in the blast, were torn to shreds, their armor no match for the sheer destructive power of human weaponry. Liang let out a ragged cheer as the remaining Type 99s opened fire, their railguns and coilguns spitting out a hail of hypervelocity death. The alien tanks, once seemingly invincible, crumpled like tin cans under the onslaught, their shields shattering and their hulls rupturing with each titanic impact. The Zorak infantry, suddenly bereft of armored support, fell back in disarray, their formation shattering under the relentless hail of human gunfire. Liang and his comrades surged forward, pressing their advantage, pouring fire into the retreating aliens, with every weapon at their disposal. It was a scene that was being repeated all across the planet, as humanity's armies unleashed their secret weapons in a coordinated global counterattack. In the ruins of New York and London, in the shattered streets of Moscow and Tokyo, human soldiers and armor clashed with the Zorak invaders in a desperate, no-holds-barred battle for survival. In the deserts of Africa and the Middle East, Challenger tanks and Merkava battled alien hover tanks in swirling, high-speed duels, their guns flashing in the harsh sunlight. In the jungles of South America, guerrilla fighters armed with jury-rigged railguns and EMP mines ambushed Zorak patrols, fading back into the undergrowth before the aliens could mount a counterattack. And in the skies above, human fighter jets and bombers, armed with the latest in missile and gun technology, dueled with Zorak drones and attack craft in a dizzying ballet of death. The air crackled with the thunder of jet engines and the scream of alien drives, the sky lit by the flash of missiles and the searing beams of plasma cannons. It was a war unlike any that had ever been fought, a desperate, planet-wide struggle for survival against an enemy that seemed like something out of a nightmare. But through it all, through the blood and the horror and the relentless grind of battle, one thing remained constant: the indomitable will of the human spirit, the stubborn refusal to bow down or give in, no matter the odds. In bunkers and command posts across the world, the leaders of Earth's resistance watched the tide of battle with a growing sense of hope. The Zoraks were being driven back, their seemingly invincible armies shattering under the onslaught of human ingenuity and courage. But they also knew that the war was far from over, that the Zoraks still possessed an almost unimaginable technological edge. If humanity was to have any hope of ultimate victory, they would need to do more than just hold the line. They would need to take the fight to the enemy, to strike at the very heart of the Zorak war machine. And so, even as the battle raged on the planet's surface, a daring plan began to take shape in the minds of Earth's greatest strategists and scientists. A plan that would require courage, sacrifice, and a willingness to risk everything on a single, desperate gamble. The stage was set for the final act of the war, a battle that would decide the fate not just of Earth, but of the entire galaxy. And as the soldiers of humanity steeled themselves for the fight to come, they knew that whatever happened, they would face it head-on, with the same grit and determination that had carried them this far. For they were human, and they would never, ever give up. In a dimly lit war room, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, the tattered remnants of Earth's leadership gathered around a holographic display table. The air was thick with tension and the acrid scent of stale coffee, a testament to the long hours and sleepless nights they had all endured. At the head of the table stood General Valerie Wilson, her once crisp uniform now rumpled and stained with the grime of battle. Her eyes, though shadowed with exhaustion, blazed with a fierce intensity as she surveyed the assembled faces. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice calm yet commanding, thanks to the courage and sacrifice of our soldiers on the front lines, we have managed to buy ourselves a precious commodity, time. The Zoraks have been forced to pull back and regroup, giving us a chance to catch our breath and plan our next move. She tapped a command into the display table, and the hologram shifted, resolving into a wireframe schematic of a massive alien ship. This is our target, she said, pointing to the vessel's bulbous center section. The Zorak flagship, the nerve center of their entire invasion force. If we can take it out, we can throw their command structure into chaos and potentially turn the tide of this war. A murmur of surprise and skepticism rippled through the room. Forgive me, General, said Admiral Singh, his brow furrowed with doubt, but how exactly are we supposed to take out a ship that size? Our nuclear arsenals barely scratched their orbital defenses, and we've thrown everything we have at them planetside. General Wilson allowed herself a grim smile. We're not going to take it out, Admiral. We're going to take it over. She tapped another command, and the hologram zoomed in on a smaller vessel nestled alongside the flagship. This is a Zorak troop transport, captured nearly intact during the Battle of Bangalore. Thanks to the tireless efforts of Dr. Adeyemi and her team, we've managed to retrofit it with human control systems and weaponry. Dr. Adeyemi stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with a mix of exhaustion and excitement. It wasn't easy, she said, but we've managed to crack the Zorak's encryption protocols and gain access to their ship-to-ship communications network. With the right codes and a lot of luck, we should be able to slip a small team aboard the flagship undetected. General Wilson nodded, her gaze sweeping the room. That's where you come in, gentlemen. We need our best and brightest for this mission, soldiers with the skills and the guts to infiltrate the very heart of the enemy's stronghold. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. I won't lie to you, she said softly, this will be the most dangerous operation of the war. The chances of success are slim, and the risks are enormous. But if we pull this off, we could end this conflict in a single stroke. For a long moment, silence reigned in the war room, each man and woman lost in their own thoughts. Then, one by one, hands began to rise, a silent chorus of volunteers stepping forward to shoulder the burden of humanity's last, desperate gamble. Among them was Sergeant Jack Hawkins, a grizzled veteran of a dozen brutal campaigns. He had lost friends and loved ones to the Zorak onslaught, had seen the horrors of the invaders' cruelty firsthand. And now, as he stood in the war room, his jaw set with grim determination, he knew that he would do whatever it took to see this mission through. The preparations were made in secret, a feverish blur of activity hidden from prying eyes. The captured Zorak transport was modified and equipped, its alien systems blended with human ingenuity to create a hybrid vessel unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. In the pre-dawn hours of a moonless night, the strike team gathered at a remote airfield, their faces painted with the grim determination of those who knew they might not return. Sergeant Hawkins was among them, his pulse rifle cradled in his arms like a lover. As they boarded the waiting transport, General Wilson was there to see them off, her eyes shining with a fierce pride. You carry the hopes and dreams of an entire species with you, she said, her voice rough with emotion. Fight hard, fight smart, and come back to us. The future of humanity rests on your shoulders. And then they were away, the alien engines flaring to life with a bone-rattling hum. The transport lifted off into the night sky, cloaked in a veil of stolen Zorak stealth technology, a ghost ship carrying the last best hope of Earth. For hours they flew, the cramped confines of the alien vessel filled with a tense, electric silence. Each soldier was lost in their own thoughts, mentally preparing for the battle to come, steeling themselves for the horrors they knew awaited them. And then, at last, the flagship loomed before them, a vast, hideous construct of alien metal and pulsing, sickly light. It filled the viewports like a monstrous, malevolent moon, its surface bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. Steady, people, came the voice of their commander over the calm, stick to the plan and watch each other's backs. We only get one shot at this. With a shudder of tortured metal, the transport docked with the flagship, its airlock sealing with a hiss of pressurized air. The strike team moved out, fanning through the eerie, biomechanical corridors of the Zorak vessel with practiced precision. They met resistance almost immediately, squads of alien soldiers surging to block their path with bullets and blades. But the humans were ready for them, their weapons spitting death and destruction with every trigger pull. Sergeant Hawkins was in the thick of it, his pulse rifle barking as he cut down Zorak warriors with ruthless efficiency. Beside him, Private Sato wielded a prototype electromagnetic pulse cannon, sending waves of disruptive energy cascading through the alien ranks. Deeper and deeper into the flagship they pushed, fighting for every inch of ground, leaving a trail of shattered alien bodies in their wake. They knew that every second counted, that the longer they took to reach their objective, the more time the Zoraks would have to mount a counterattack. At last, they reached the ship's central control nexus, a vast, pulsing chamber filled with arcane machinery and writhing, organic cables. In the center of it all, suspended in a web of glowing tendrils, was the Zorak commander, a hideous, insectoid monstrosity that radiated an aura of malevolent intelligence. "Surrender, human filth," it screeched in a voice that was a twisted parody of language. "You cannot hope to defeat the might of the Zorak Empire." But Sergeant Hawkins only smiled, a cold, merciless grin that held no trace of fear. "We don't need to defeat you," he said softly, raising his rifle to his shoulder. "We only need to delay you." And with that, he opened fire, his bullets joined by a hurricane of electromagnetic pulses and searing laser beams. The Zorak commander screamed as the barrage tore into its body, ichor and sparks flying in a grisly fountain. All around them, the ship's systems began to fail, lights flickering and alarms blaring as the humans' weapons wrought havoc on the alien technology. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks, bulkheads warped and twisted as structural integrity fields collapsed. In the chaos, Sergeant Hawkins and his team fought their way back to their transport, battling through waves of desperate Zorak soldiers. They piled aboard, sealing the airlocks even as the flagship began to tear itself apart around them. And as they rocketed away into the night, the Zorak vessel exploding behind them in a cataclysmic fireball, they knew that they had achieved the impossible. They had struck at the very heart of the enemy, had bought humanity the time it needed to regroup and mount a final, desperate counterattack. But even as they celebrated their victory, even as the news of their daring raid spread like wildfire across the battered surface of the earth, they knew that the war was far from over. The Zoraks were wounded, reeling from the loss of their flagship and their commander, but they were far from defeated. The final battle was still to come, a climactic confrontation that would decide the fate of not just one world, but of an entire galaxy. And as Sergeant Hawkins and his fellow soldiers steeled themselves for the fight to come, they knew that they would face it head-on, with all the courage and determination that the human spirit could muster. For they were the last line of defense, the thin gray line that stood between their species and annihilation. And they would hold that line, no matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice. For they were human, and they would never, ever surrender. In the wake of the daring raid on the Zorak flagship, a fragile hope began to bloom across the war-torn earth. In every city, in every nation, the news of the alien commander's defeat spread like wildfire, kindling a spark of defiance in the hearts of the weary defenders. But even as the people celebrated, the leaders of the resistance knew that their work was far from over. The Zoraks, though wounded and reeling, still possessed a vast armada of ships and an almost inexhaustible supply of soldiers. If humanity was to have any chance of ultimate victory, they would need to press their advantage, to strike while the enemy was still off balance. In the underground bunkers and hidden bases that served as the nerve centers of the human resistance, a feverish planning session began. Generals and admirals, scientists and strategists, all pooled their knowledge and resources, seeking a way to turn the tide of the war once and for all. "We've hurt them," said General Wilson, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination. "But hurt isn't enough. We need to break them, to shatter their ability to wage war on a galactic scale." Dr. Adeyemi nodded, her fingers flying over the keys of her console. "Their technology is still far superior to ours," she said, "but thanks to the data we've gathered from the capture of their flagship, we've begun to understand it better. If we can find a way to turn that technology against them." An idea began to take shape, a plan as audacious as it was desperate. Using the knowledge gleaned from the Zorak computers, human scientists and engineers would work to reverse engineer the aliens' own weapons and systems, to create a new hybrid technology that blended the best of both species' capabilities. It was a monumental undertaking, a task that would require every ounce of humanity's ingenuity and resourcefulness. But if they could pull it off, if they could create a fleet of ships and weapons that could match the Zorak's own, they might just have a chance. And so, even as the war raged on across the planet's surface, a secret project began in the depths of the Resistance's hidden bases. Scientists and engineers labored day and night, pushing themselves to the brink of exhaustion as they sought to unravel the secrets of Zorak technology. Piece by piece, component by component, a new arsenal began to take shape. Ships that combined the resilience and firepower of human vessels with the speed and maneuverability of Zorak craft. Weapons that harnessed the raw power of alien energy sources, channeling them through human-designed conduits and firing mechanisms. It was a synthesis of the old and the new, a blending of two species' strengths that had never been seen before. And as the first prototypes began to roll off the production lines, a sense of hope and determination began to spread through the ranks of the Resistance. But even as humanity prepared for its final stand, the Zoraks were not idle. Enraged by the loss of their flagship and the death of their commander, the alien leaders vowed revenge, marshalling every ship and soldier at their disposal for a massive counterattack. The final battle, when it came, was like nothing the Earth had ever seen before. The skies above the planet blazed with the fire of 1,000 suns as the two fleets clashed, human and Zorak ships twisting and turning in a deadly dance of destruction. On the ground, armies of soldiers and war machines fought a desperate, bloody battle, the very earth shaking beneath the thunder of their weapons. In the ruins of the world's great cities, in the blasted wastelands that had once been green fields and forests, the fate of humanity hung in the balance. At the forefront of the human fleet was a new class of ship, a sleek, deadly vessel that bore the hopes and dreams of an entire species. Christened the Valkyrie, it was a marvel of hybrid technology, its hull shimmering with the telltale glow of Zorak energy shielding even as human-designed railguns and missile batteries bristled from its flanks. At the helm of the lead Valkyrie stood Admiral Singh, his face set in a mask of grim determination. Beside him, a hand-picked crew of the Resistance's best and brightest manned their stations, their fingers poised over weapons consoles and navigational arrays. "This is it," the Admiral said, his voice ringing out over the ship's comm system. "This is the moment we've all been fighting for. The Zoraks think they can crush us, that they can wipe our species from the face of the galaxy. But we're going to show them just how wrong they are." As if in response to his words, the Zorak fleet surged forward, a tidal wave of alien ships and weapons that seemed to fill the very sky. But the Valkyries were ready for them, their hybrid shields flaring to life as they absorbed the first punishing volleys of the enemy's fire. And then, with a roar that shook the very heavens, the human fleet unleashed its own barrage, a storm of railgun slugs and fusion missiles that tore through the Zorak ranks like a scythe through wheat. Ships exploded in gouts of flame and debris, their hulls shattering under the relentless onslaught of human weaponry. But the Zoraks were far from defeated, and they fought back with all the savage fury of a wounded beast. Energy beams and plasma blasts crisscrossed the void, searing through shields and hulls alike. The Valkyries shuddered under the impact, their crews straining to keep the ships in the fight. On the planet below, the ground war had reached a fever pitch, human and Zorak forces clashing in a brutal, no-holds-barred melee. Tanks and war machines dueled in the ruins of shattered cities, while soldiers fought hand-to-hand in the rubble-strewn streets. In the heart of the Resistance's command bunker, General Wilson watched the tide of battle with a mixture of hope and trepidation. All around her, holographic displays showed the ebb and flow of the fighting, the gains and losses of human and Zorak forces alike. "Come on," she whispered, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "Come on, you bastards. Break. Break for us, just this once." And then, as if in answer to her prayers, something miraculous happened. Across the planet, in 100 different battlefields, the Zorak lines began to waver, then crumble. Faced with the relentless onslaught of humanity's new hybrid weapons, the aliens' resolve finally began to falter. In the skies above, Admiral Singh saw his chance. With a wordless cry of triumph, he ordered the Valkyries forward, driving a wedge deep into the heart of the Zorak fleet. And as the human ships pressed their advantage, the aliens' formation began to come apart, ships scattering and fleeing before the fury of their attackers. It was a moment of pure, exhilarating victory, a triumph of the human spirit over impossible odds. And as the news of the Zorak's defeat spread like wildfire across the planet, a great cheer went up from every corner of the globe, a cry of joy and relief that echoed to the very stars themselves. But even in the midst of their celebration, the people of Earth knew that their victory had come at a terrible price. Billions had died in the war, entire cities reduced to rubble and ash. The planet itself would bear the scars of the conflict for generations to come, a testament to the savagery and destruction that had been unleashed upon it. And yet, even as they mourned their losses and surveyed the ruins of their world, the survivors of the Great War knew that they had achieved something miraculous. Against all odds, against an enemy that had seemed invincible, they had prevailed, had proven once and for all the indomitable strength of the human spirit. In the years that followed, as humanity began the long, slow process of rebuilding, the lessons of the war would never be forgotten. The courage and sacrifice of those who had fought and died, the ingenuity and resourcefulness of those who had worked to turn the enemy's own strength against them, these would become the stuff of legend, tales of heroism and determination that would be passed down from generation to generation. And as the people of Earth looked to the stars once more, this time not in fear but in hope, they knew that they would never again be the same. They had been forged in the crucible of war, tempered by the fires of adversity, and emerged stronger and more united than ever before. For they were human, and they had faced the greatest challenge in the history of their species, and they had emerged victorious. And now, as they set their sights on the vast expanse of the galaxy before them, they knew that there was nothing they could not achieve, no frontier they could not conquer, if only they stood together. The Zorak War had been a time of unimaginable darkness, a nightmare from which it seemed there could be no waking. But in the end, it had also been a testament to the unbreakable spirit of humanity, a shining example of what could be accomplished when a species stood united in the face of annihilation. And as the people of Earth looked to the future, they did so with a newfound sense of purpose and determination, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them head-on, and they would overcome them, just as they had overcome the greatest threat in the history of their kind. For they were human, and they would never, ever give up.